So early last year, dramatic images surfaced on the internet of a young woman covered in deep bruises, lacerations, and her feet were swollen from infection. While she resembled a victim of a war-torn country, it was in fact abuse inflicted upon a foreign domestic helper here in Hong Kong. Yet what's most unsettling about this woman's story is the fact that this crime against humanity took place in Asia's royal city, and by no means is just an isolated incident. Like many of Hong Kong's 324,000 foreign domestic helpers, Ariana had essentially been mistreated just like that of a slave. This included months of torture from her employer, including daily beatings, 21-hour work hours, sleeping on the floor, and being locked up. When she was no longer useful, her employer dumped her at the airport and with a ticket home and $9. For years now, domestic helper abuse has been a prominent issue that activists have constantly pushed to eradicate in Hong Kong society. But Ariana's case truly seems to be the tipping point. In wake of her story, other foreign domestic helpers have come out and put forward their own allegations of abuse and are calling for reforms, which has become louder. Hong Kong's leader, C.Y. Leung, has said that the government would absolutely not tolerate violence, yet officials in the government have done little to address this issue. A recent report by Amnesty International similarly concluded that women who come to Hong Kong as migrant workers are routinely underpaid, exploited, and subjected to serious human rights violations. And the exploitation of these workers is inevitable and has sadly become an integral part of our society. So why does this concern me? Or for a matter of fact, any of you in the audience? Ladies and gentlemen, we've overlooked this problem for far too long, which has exacerbated the situation. And to comprehensively address this problem, we need to overcome the great frontier at our doorstep. And what is this frontier, you ask? It's the inequality that we're being faced with in our society. It would be an understatement to say that most, if not all of you in the audience today, have come across domestic helpers in their daily lives. In fact, let me pose you with this question. How many of you in this very room have a helper at home? Okay, that seems quite a lot. So while this phenomenon of domestic helpers is hardly unique to Hong Kong, certain Hong Kong laws and little government oversight have aggravated this issue. Moreover, the violence against foreign domestic helpers isn't the only grounded problem we're being faced with. Racial discrimination has remained a prominent issue worldwide, and it's safe to say that this issue is no different for a multinational city. Little has changed since we set up the commission in 1996 to curb bigotry based on sex, disability, and family status. A recent report by the SCMP highlights the discrimination of ethnic minorities in Hong Kong and to what extent that they're disadvantaged within our community. The story highlights Bushra Khalif, the ideal of Bushra Khalif, looking to rent a tiny flat in Cheung Sha Wan, as landlords would turn her away because of her skin color. She claimed that finding a home in Hong Kong is a battle against prejudice for ethnic minorities. However, the problem doesn't just stop with housing. From hailing a cab or opening a bank account to receiving treatment at a hospital or even finding a job, ethnic minorities, most of whom are poor and underprivileged, are facing all kinds of discrimination in our society. Unfortunately, race has become a basis of poverty in Hong Kong, as a landmark report states that some South Asian minorities live in a parallel, poorer, and more deprived version of our city. Ladies and gentlemen, the clock is ticking. Each hour we delay, hundreds of domestic helpers and ethnic minorities who migrate to our city for a better job and a better life are subjected to a disadvantaged life. Yet, we can't solve this problem with mere rhetoric. Hong Kong is frequently described as a place where East meets West, as it reflects the cultural mix of Chinese roots with the influence of our times as a British colony. Hong Kong's classification as a special administrative region has gained its name as an international hub. We're often described as a nation of inclusivity, prosperity, and equality. However, issues of repression of ethnic minorities and violence against domestic helpers raises an important question. To what extent do we conform to these ideals? Living in a country like Hong Kong, where cultural diversity is so abundant, it's easy to believe that our attitude towards minorities and domestic helpers are acceptable. We as a community have certain preconceptions about domestic helpers and these ethnic minorities. These preconceptions dwell because of what we perceive from the world around us. This includes, but is not limited to, the media and the way that they portray these issues that are relevant to these citizens. As expats, we sometimes perceive a negative attitude towards them because of the employments that they take up. However, isn't this highly ironic considering that most ethnic minorities and domestic helpers are trapped within a cycle of poverty? The employments that they're taken up are based on the fact that they're denied basic opportunities within our society. In short, they're trapped within a cycle of poverty which they can't escape from. When we put this issue into context into our wider society, we need to ask ourselves a question. Are we really being inclusive? If yes, to what extent? If not, why? Ideally, we'd like to break the stigmatization that we're being faced with. And for that, ladies and gentlemen, I call for reintegration within our society and the call for stronger measures to be put in place to protect the welfare of our citizens that make up our home. In addition, the importance of putting this issue into context and fully immersing oneself into comprehending the depth and complexity of this issue is important when you address it. I urge all of you to take the time to talk to these individuals, to learn from their stories, and most of all, to open up your minds. Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I'd like to end my speech today by saying, connection starts with you, and if it's never initiated, the fire is never lit. So I want all of you here to go home today, communicate, empathize, initiate equality, and most of all, make a difference. Thank you.